network of corporate governance of SOEs in India. And we welcome on behalf of the Institute of Public Enterprise. Today we have got two good panel discussions, I can say. So they're talking about promoting ethics and integrity in individual SOEs. And the first panel is on enhancing board governance, communicating internal controls, implementing ethics and compliance programs and measures. We have our moderator for this morning, Dr. Mithalde Mesnard, Deputy Director of the Directorate for Financial and Enterprise Affairs. And we have got 5 speakers. I think the first session is going to be quite enlightening with all 5 distinguished speakers with us. We have S.K. Acharya, former Chairman and Managing Director, Neyveli Lignite Corporation. Shri S.K. Bhattacharya, Director, Mining, Hindustan Copper Limited. Mr. Yu Tang-Q, Vice President and Board Secretary, China Railway Group Limited. Dr. Jesus Estanslo, Institute of Corporate Directors, Philippines. And Mr. Abdul Aziz Abu Bakr, Institute of Directors, Malaysia. So we request Madam to start the session and take over the proceedings.
Thank you, Madam. I'm very, very pleased and honored to chair such a distinguished panel this morning. I will just say a few words about each of the speakers before they speak, but you know, I could take almost 5 minutes to present each of them so because they have such a distinguished career. So we have a very important topic to discuss, as was mentioned. What is the role of the board, you know, in ensuring that you have this culture of integrity, that you have all the mechanism in place, that they are effectively used, etc. In this report that has been written by my colleagues, and that I warmly encourage you to read because it's a very good report. My colleague Hans Christensen will present it a little bit more in the following session. It is shown that in 42% of the persons that have been surveyed in all, levels of the corporation of state-owned enterprises, 42% of them have witnessed issues of corruption or irregularities, directly witnessed that. So, what we are discussing this morning is not theory, you know, it's real life. You have SOEs, there is a high risk of non-compliance or corruption in state-owned enterprises in all regions, it's not only in Asia. We see that, and we have heard a lot of scandals recently in other countries, in OECD countries, in many countries. And we all know that when you have such issues in state-owned enterprise, because of the prominence of these enterprises, because of their significance for the economy, because of their also political significance, it is quite serious. And it could lead to a lot of political issues, social issues, economic loss, etc., and decrease in trust in general. So it's a very important topic that we are discussing this morning. And as I told you, I will let my distinguished panelists present their experience in handling these issues in very big state-owned enterprises. So we'll begin with India, with Dr. Acharya, the former CMD of NLC India Limited. Dr. Acharya has had a very distinguished careers in many Indian SOEs, big ones. I will mention just a few, excuse me. He has been also the Director of Human Resources in NLCIL. He has been the General Manager in the National Thermal Power Corporation and Head of Corporate Human Resource in NTPC Sale Power Company. So, among others, it's just an appetizer. So, Doctor, please tell us what is your experience in handling these compliance integrity issues from the board perspective.
Okay, yeah. A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome specifically to OECD delegates coming from the countries other than India. And The topic today, I will not be going through the presentation because of the time constraint, though I have got it loaded. I'll be speaking out of my experience of being on the board of a Government of India enterprise, because the state-owned enterprises here are called the CPSE, Central Public Sector Enterprises, or the PSUs, Public Sector Undertakings here in India. And having been on the board for almost 9 years, let me tell you that it is the administrative and political will, when both go together in a developing country with a mixed economy like India. The state enterprises play a very dominant role, a significant portion of contribution to the country's GDP, as well as here, as you may be knowing, India got its independence from the British rule in the year 1947. And in the post-independent era, there was a need to build the state enterprises, what we call the modern temples of India, the PSUs were called that time, with the specific objective of promoting the core industries, the utilities, and also generating employment for people which India was badly in need of that time. But over the years, with the progress coming in and the strides that India has taken over the years, now the scenario is changed, and every public sector enterprise here, or the state-owned enterprise, is supposed to promote the nation building, yes, but at the same time to work on the commercial or the business lines. And while working on the commercial and business lines, and the state-owned enterprises get governed by the rules coming down from the Companies Law, which came into existence in 1956 itself. Of course, over the years, it has undergone many changes, and the latest one is Companies Act 2013, which raised the bar for corporate governance in many areas. And the implementing agencies are, because for the state-owned enterprises, it is basically the president who holds the majority share. It can vary from 51% and above. And in joint venture also, there where we have the ownership of the state to a majority extent, and the private participation also is there. But nevertheless, the Companies Act govern all these companies, and those who are listed, that is the Security and Exchange Board of India Limited, those guidelines are there. And the implementing guidelines flow from the Department of Public Enterprises, as well as the SEBI guidelines, as I told, and the Companies Act being the basic mandate for compliance, and starting with the disclosure, and then following the good business practices. Basically, the tenet is corporate governance is doing the good to the people, good to the stakeholders, and the shareholders' interest are never to come in conflict with the interest of the stakeholders. If we keep that in mind, in Indian ethos, this corporate governance and business ethics were very much there in the ancient days also, when in the kingly ruled states, it was basically doing good for the people and promoting the overall well-being. And the same ethos got transferred when Mahatma Gandhi came with the theory of the trusteeship. Basically, in public enterprises, in state-owned enterprises, the money, what we use is the public money we invest. The wealth we generate, that is basically the public wealth, and we happen to be the trustees. And as the trustees, we just don't have the discretion to squander away the money. The way we spend, those are regulated, guided, and everything should be going for public good. That is the basic tenet we have been following. While the basic tenets are there, and tenets now also provide that not only you work towards the profit, but the end should be justified, and the means adopted should also be fair. So adopting a fair means promoting the competition, promoting the transparency, promoting the accountability. All these aspects are to be taken care of in mind. So starting with the disclosure, putting in the public domain, because we have the Right to Information Act also available. So everything is to be made public, the way we function, the way we deliver. Specifically coming to the contract and handling the contractual business, there are a lot of probity is required. And that probity requires, again, let me tell you, you must be facing the same sort of situation in your own countries. Having a plethora of laws or legislations are not adequate unless we sanitize ourselves in our own approach and conduct that we do, and that should translate into the group conduct. And when we talk to in terms of a company, the board as such should stand clear in terms of probity. And over the years, whatever we experienced, let me share it with you. Now, of course, earlier, the sustainability and corporate social responsibility was not basically a part of the Companies Act, and companies followed, in fact, many private companies also, they followed that, yes, once we create the wealth, and wealth is for the well-being of people, and we should be contributing to the betterment of the society. And for the betterment of the society, many people used to, like Tatas and Birlas, they are the big companies here in India, they have been doing it. And so far as public sector is concerned, Department of Public Enterprises from time to time issued the guidelines. But now in 2013, the Companies Act made it mandatory that for certain companies having the threshold income, and that minimum 2% of average profit is to be spent on the corporate social responsibilities, with areas earmarked which are basically for the economically backward areas and promoting the heritage, promoting the culture. So areas are specified over that. And here, in fact, now the basic practice that we follow is the Triple P principle. In Triple P principle, it is basically the people, planet, and the profitability. I was going through the OECD guidelines. OECD guidelines also are very lucid in this manner. And in fact, it is for the environment that we have today, we'll have to pass on a better environment tomorrow. That is why the people and the profit will come at the last. But yes, we have to take care of the fact that the next generation also should reap the benefit. And coming to the functional aspect, here we face this, this is a challenge, in fact. When we have a good government with a good governance system, then the industry-friendly policies flow in, and with the present government we are experiencing that. So a lot of autonomy is available. Basically, these are the board-driven companies, and board has the autonomy. But at the same time, here, every company, a public sector enterprise or the state-owned enterprise, comes under a specific ministry. Like the industry I headed, there it came under the Ministry of Coal. And there, under the Ministry of Coal, if you underline the word under, then the autonomy perhaps seemingly get compromised. And since the government represents the president and the share flowing in from that, and the Babus sometimes feel that they have the role to interfere with the board governance, then the alignment with the government policy is fine. The goal being driven down from the government's priorities to build the nation is fine. But at the same time, the typical bureaucracy coming in and interfering in the board-driven policies of the company, that is one thing we find. But yes, in many cases, because here the board comprises of the independent directors, the functional directors, including the chairman, though there is a thinking now in the companies, the executive position, the managing director, and the chairman could be different. We have not done in many cases. We'll have to think on those lines. But yes, these guidelines are basically being contemplated now. But here, coming to the government also nominates a director on the board, and the companies, based on their net worth, the profit, are given the status of Maharatnas, Navaratnas, and Mini Ratnas, and so on. And there, the government puts the nominees maybe at the level of joint secretary or additional secretary, or particular the ministry, as the director representing the government, and also the other directors coming from different background. But there what we feel is the professionalism that should count, and the independent directors who are being chosen, if they come from the areas which are concerned with the industry's business, and then the contribution is more. And the government director also should bring in the values in terms of the nation building priorities. That is what. And in experience, what we find, there are certain nuances which need to be taken care of, and certain improvements needed to be there. And we always deliberate along with the scope, with the concerned ministry, and that these changes should come forth. And again, coming to the tenure of the board as such, once we tell that company has to think in terms of long-term, there should be long-term leadership vision, and the ethics also should, ethics and integrity should be an integral part of the entire exercise. Then the short period of the tenure of the directors or the CMDs are not very helpful. Even in our country, on a lighter side, I say the government needs at least, the elected government, 5 years to prove its leadership worth and the mettle. And if you expect a director or a chairman would come, work for 1 year or 2 years, and the leadership implementation has to be there, and leadership the same way the things should flow in, should be carried forward. Perhaps not. So that is one thing also we have been proposing, that the stable tenureship of the board to be there. And coming to the alignment, as basically we say that state-owned enterprises have to build the nation. And the national priorities, once it is defined, it flows down, not only in the short term, it should be aligned with the long term. And the board, with 50% independent directors coming in, and the boards are now in some companies, Navaratna and Maharatna companies, it is something around 16 to 18 numbers. So there the board becomes unwieldy, because you can have the annual general body meeting where all stakeholders, 7 shareholders are there. But at the same time, if the board will comprise of around 16 to 20 persons, it becomes unwieldy. So for the effectiveness of that, it has to be a good board with comprise of maybe around 9 persons. That proposal is still under consideration. And then, as I told, all the functional directors and CMDs, in India we have a good practice. There is a public enterprises selection board. They choose the people, and their integrity is a must. They take into account the integrity of the person, as has been noticed and observed over a period of almost 10 to 15 years, and then a person comes through that selection and gets, and then for the appointment also, it goes up to the PMO and the president, because president is the final appointing authority. So all the directors and chairman, they stand to the test of probity before they get appointed. And once they're appointed, all their actions, including the contractual things and the business transactions, are open for probing by the internal vigilance. A robust audit mechanism. We have the internal auditors, we have the statutory auditors, and then the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, who can question the manner things have been spent or in the manner the things have been acquired. And there are the agencies like Central Bureau of Investigation and the CVC, Central Vigilance Commission, which also hold the implementation and the probity, because not only the ethical code of conduct has been laid down in the SEBI guidelines, not only in the guidelines of DP, but also the compliance and reports are given, and anything going wrong, then the penalty provision also follows, and the penalty in some cases leads to imprisonment, not only the fine, and many cases where the scam and other things Ma'am was referring to, things never went unnoticed. And in fact, let me tell you one thing. We have the principle enshrined, but the principle is not for hanging like a poster on the wall. It should be internalized and implemented. And implementation is one thing, because rules are good, they are done with a good purpose. But as you may be facing in your countries also, unless the intention, unless the way you implement are robust, and also checks and balances are there everywhere, then things would be difficult. And for the ethical conduct, laying down the standards, following the benchmarks is a must. And basically what we feel, once we say the state ownership, the state ownership policy is to be documented, is to be circulated. But what is happening now, there is multiple, at least here in India we feel, the control and monitoring at multiple levels. And that gets sometimes so cumbersome that hardly you are able to focus on your priorities, because just compliance, compliance, and compliance. Compliance is fine, but at the same time, if the administrative ministry is the controlling ministry, let there be monitoring authority, be with the, and another thing, the government or the bureaucracy normally think in terms of the control. Instead of control, it should be the facilitation. I don't know what would be your experience in your other countries. Once we talk of a state ownership and the state policy, and we believe that these are the instruments for building the state economy and giving the benefit to the public. So in that case, unless we specifically lay down the priorities, communicate and facilitate the companies or the state-owned enterprises to work toward that, things could be difficult. Bureaucracy could be, in many times we experience, could be a hurdle or a bottleneck or a constraint, instead of when it is things in only in terms of monitoring and the control, not in terms of the facilitation. And the implementing agencies also, this what we talked about, the robust audit system, audit mechanism, the Comptroller and Auditor General coming at the last, who can take up and castigate any wrongdoing so far the spending is concerned, coming to the probity part of it. And also the CBC and CBI and CBC. These are very much dreaded. In fact, people here in India tell that many companies are not able to take decisions or to function freely because of the fear of 3 Cs. That is CBC, CBI, and CAG. There is nothing to be afraid of, as I told. If your end is fair, means adopted are fair, and we can stand up to the probity, we can stand up to the justice, there is nothing to be afraid of. And the rules are made, and the errant, the people, those who violate the rules are punished. But if there is no violation, I don't think there is anything to be afraid of. So a strong and robust check and balance mechanism have to be in place. And I think, ma'am, with that, your 10 minutes is over. If any question or query is there, I would respond. My presentation is there, which can be upheld, because I thought because of the time constraint, I would not be doing justice to the presentation that is before you. Anything I would like to respond?
Thank you very much, Dr. Acharya. You told us many very interesting things and show how in the Indian context you have both like prevention, like detection and also investigation at the end. So.
We believe prevention is better than instead of reprimand and punishment. Punishment is something which is a post-action, but prevention makes people aware that what are the things to be done and what are the things not to be done. If somebody knowingly does it, maybe one mistake can be thought that yes, while working, possibly. But again, if a repeated mistake is there, then the castigation is a must. But that should be the last resort to be followed to reprimand or punish a person.
Thank you very much. So we see how you need really to work on the prevention, as you said. For example, you mentioned all these probing of integrity of the members of the boards, of the directors, etc. You need to have robust systems to detect, so it includes a lot of disclosure mechanisms, a lot of compliance mechanisms, but you also need at the end enforcement in case things go wrong, and apparently you do have that in India. So including like some prison sentences, so sometimes it helps to focus the minds of people when you have some good examples or some bad examples. So thank you very much. I will give the floor to our second panelist, and maybe at the end, once we have had the whole Presentation, we'll organize a general Q&A session. Thank you very much, Dr. Acharya.
Thank you.
So now I'll call Mr. Bhattacharya, who is the Director of Mining in Hindustan Coppers Limited. And you have had a very distinguished career in all the mining industries, in copper mining, in iron ore mining, in bauxite mining, and also in construction activities and infrastructure development in state highways. So please take the floor for 10 minutes or so and share your experience.
A very good morning to all of you, respected moderator, my fellow speakers on the dais, eminent guests from the overseas, and my Indian senior officials. Yesterday, my Controller General, Dr. Chaube, Mr. Mishra, Mr. Sharaf, has briefly elaborated all the corporate governance issues. And ultimately, the second session, which was ended at 5 Cs with some Uday Kotak committee recommendations, I will start because the repetition will unnecessarily kill your time. And to start with, I briefly give a small introduction about the mining companies, particularly where I serve. It is from the last 19 years. This company is the only integrated copper company in India. We produce copper ore to 40 million tons and have an ambitious plan of reaching to 12 million tons and gradually to 20 million tons per year basis. The expansion plans are in progress. We are converting the open pit mines to underground mines because the deep-seated deposits are to be equally given importance for the development of Indian economy. In brief, company has produced around 30,000 tons, 25,000 tons of copper cathode in previous year, and we have a shareholding of about 76% as on date by Government of India. The paid up capital is around 462 crores, and company turnover has reached around $235 million, US dollars. Gentlemen, yesterday there was a ending by our GM of Naveli Lignite Corporation. Just to add, in his presentation, I would like to inform the August gathering that last year in India, the CVC has received around 26,052 complaints, which includes the brought forward cases also, and in the year, almost 22,386 were disposed of. About 5,400 major penalties were imposed, whereas the minor penalties was restricted to about 12,000 or so. In our company, you will be surprised to note a survey recently done in 2017 by a non-government organization. I don't know what is the total facts in the reports, but it is a Berlin-based company. And the Corruption Perception Index 2017, you will be surprised to note that India was 79th place among 176 countries. India's ranking in the annual corruption index released by that company slided to 81 among a group of 180 countries. And the index, which measures perception of corruption in the public sector, uses a scale of 0 to 100, where 0 is highly corrupt and 100 is very clear. India's score remained intact at 40 points. The other countries like New Zealand and is around 89 to 80, the very fairly placed, whereas the Syria, South Sudan, and Somalia are ranked as 14, 12, and 9, and really alarming for the industries. I will not take much of time, and also would like to inform the gathering that the 2018 survey of ECI, recently conducted by the Australia, the ethics, pressure to compromise standards, the high value is 47, whereas the mean value is 22, and the lowest value is 10. Whereas observed misconduct, the high value is 48, is reported for Indonesia, and the lowest value is 15, that is Japan. The experienced retaliation is highest is 74, that is India, whereas the lowest value is China, 29%. The culture measurement in 12 countries, 1 in 3 or more employees do not trust the word of their supervisors. This is something very key issues for the industry. And report of misconduct rise to 94% when the management verbally promotes workplace integrity. This is again one of the major issues for the deliberation within the House. The ECI Global Index Ethics is the 11th survey report is recently published. As far as company SCL Hindustan Copper Limited is concerned, I can very proudly say the company has in place adequate internal financial control with reference to financial statements, commensurate with its size and operation to be followed by company detailing the policies to be followed. The board of directors of the company has developed, implemented a risk management policy for the company, including identification therein all elements of risk which in the opinion of the board may threaten the existence of the company. It has a vast potential for growth, and Vigilance Department has to play an enabling role to strengthen the system and process to achieve the high level of strengthening the system and procedures. So far as this subject is concerned, I must congratulate Madam for OECD's performance for publishing the book titled The On Enterprise and Corruption. I think the book is already available in the kit. What are the risks and what can be done, published by OECD, is really categorically discuss all the issues, and the issues, I appreciate the efforts done by OECD in this respect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bhattacharya. You gave us a lot of sobering numbers and data about corruption in India in general. And you mentioned all the different mechanisms that can be put in place in the companies and at the board level to try to tame this issue. So we have now some of a good picture of what's going on in India, but we will now look at China with Mr. Yu Tangchun, who is the Vice President and Board Secretary of China Railway Group. So I don't imagine how many people, how many employees you have. I think I know that the Indian Railway is the biggest company on earth, but maybe China is not far. So you have had, you are also a professor, an economist, a tutor of postgraduates, arbitrator. You serve as the arbitrator for the Belt and Road initiative, if I well understand. So you have a very distinguished career, and we are very honored to have you here. And maybe if you could explain what is the Chinese experience in putting in place mechanisms, including at the board level, to ensure compliance in big Chinese state-owned enterprises, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello everyone. I'm Yu Tengqun from China Railway Group. Appreciate for the organizers' invitation to let me have the chance to attend this meeting. I am honored to have the chance to gain the experts' sharing of this experience and viewpoints. It is a good chance for me to share with you practice and the results of China's SOE governance. My company, China Railway Group Limited, is a Maxis-listed state-holding company with head office in Beijing. It is one of the largest infrastructure construction group in the world and ranked 6th in 2018's Fortune Global 500. We have more than 300,000 employees and created 2.2 million jobs to the society. We have business presence in more than 90 countries in the world and regions, creating more than 40,000 jobs. We have been listed successively in Shanghai and Hong Kong Stock Exchange in December 2007, transforming from a traditional SOE to the modern public company, which established modern enterprise system. In the past 11 years after listing, we have been exploring to establish a modern enterprise system with Chinese characteristics, as well as continuously enhancing and improving the corporate governance. The topic I'm going to share with you today is establishment of modern SOE system with Chinese characteristics. I would like to express my viewpoints from 5 perspectives. SOEs are not only exist in China, but China's SOEs must have Chinese characteristics. I share this viewpoint at the OECD meeting held in Beijing 2012. I remember Mr. Hans attended that meeting either. SOEs and state-owned economy and commonly exist in countries around the world. From the point of view, except for certain SOEs in the few countries which are established under the public law. SOEs are often incorporated under the bounded by the domestic company law. However, SOEs of each country are affected by politics, social system, history, culture, and law, and especially the development state of this economy. Therefore, it results in different characteristics. The Constitution of China states that China is a socialist country and it adopts socialist market economy. It also states that state-owned economy is the leading force in the national economy, and the state ensures the consolidation and growth of state-owned economy. Therefore, SOEs play key roles in China's economic development. China's SOEs are incorporated under the company law of China. They are private and independent entities. Shareholders should bear limited liabilities up to their respective investment amount or shares they held. SOEs shall establish corporate governance structure according to the company law. China's SOEs shall be with Chinese characteristics. The first characteristic of modern SOE system with Chinese characteristics follows the general pattern of modern enterprise system. Modern enterprise system shall be under market economy with a typical from its company. Some people cite that company is the second biggest invention of human being after the invention of steam engine by James Watt. China adopts the socialist market economy system, with SOEs are companies in nature. The government clearly states that establishment of modern enterprise system is the direction of SOE reform. Therefore, the modern enterprise system is the logical starting point of modern SOE system with Chinese characteristics. We need to follow the general pattern of modern enterprise system in establishing modern SOE system with Chinese characteristics. We need to face or solve the problem on corporate governance, which others seem for most of companies in the world. For instance, we insist on the principle of balance of power, which is in line with the principle promoted by the OECD guidelines on corporate governance of SOEs. First, China Railway sets up general meeting, board of directors, management, and board of supervisors in accordance with the company law and executed its powers in accordance with the law and the articles of association. Second, we strengthened the internal balance and restraint within the board of directors. The board of directors of China Railway consists of 9 directors, where more than half of them. 5 directors are independent directors. Independent directors conduct their duties independently. Third, the strengthened the establishment of special committee on the board of directors. From the experience around the globe, special committees under the board of directors are important platforms for independent directors to conduct their duties. China Railway set up nomination committee, strategy committee, audit and risk management committee, remuneration committee, and HSE committee, among which audit and risk management committee and remuneration committee are all comprised of independent directors, whereas nomination committee, strategy committee, and HSE committee have presence of independent directors. Fourth, we insist on diversification of the board of directors. The policy on diversification of the board of directors formulated by the board of directors of company comprehensively considers the factors like age, profession, and career background of directors. The board of directors are diversified, complementary in experience, balanced and restrained so as to enhance the satisfaction of decision making. The second characteristic of modern SOE system with Chinese characteristics stick to the leadership of the CPC on OECS. The CPC is a distinctive political characteristic of China. It is laid down clearly in the China Constitution and is the basic condition of our country. Modern enterprise system has vitality only if it is harmonious to the country's system and adaptive to the country's market economy development level, politics, economy, society, legal system, and cultural traditions. It is necessary to consider the role of state ownership when establishing modern enterprise system of the SOEs. China's SOEs are owned by the entire people, which is an important substance and the political foundation of socialism with Chinese characteristics, and is also an important pillar and supporting strength for the CPC to govern the country. It is natural that we have shall stick to the leadership of the CPC. Therefore, we shall stick to the leadership of CPC when we establish modern SOE system with Chinese characteristics. The third characteristic of modern SOE system with Chinese characteristics combines the leadership of CPC with improvement in corporate governance. The President of China, Xi Jinping, stated that we shall adhere to the important political principle of the leadership of CPC on SOEs and shall adhere to in the direction of SOEs reform of establishing modern enterprise system. Those adhere to two unwavering principles are unified and cannot be separated. The party organization demonstrates leadership function, but it doesn't mean that it manages all affairs of the company. Now it replaces the board of directors and other governance bodies. The party organization doesn't make specific business decisions and is not the company's command center of production and operation. The party organization carries out study and check on whether the proposals meet with the directions and the policies of the CPC. States law and regulation and enterprises strategic plans. The proposals will be finally approved by the decision-making bodies of the company. such as board of directors and management. China Railways set up the Communist Party organization in accordance with regulations. The party organization is an organic component of the company's governance structure, and it carries out its responsibilities in accordance with law and regulations and the articles of the company pursuant to the Articles of Association. It also clearly states that responsibilities of each governance body and work procedures ensures the smooth operation and increase in efficiency of the corporate governance structure. Modern SOE system with Chinese characteristics is an enrichment and development of the world's modern enterprise system. Modern SOE system with Chinese characteristics is the conclusion of hard exploration of SOE reform of China in the past decades. It is also realization path and method of Chinese modern enterprise system, which combines the general pattern of modern enterprise system with the reality of China. It is an enrichment and development of modern enterprise system and is important corporate governance component of the SOEs around the world. It provides a new solution for the complicit corporate governance of SOEs and provide reference to the corporate governance of SOEs in other countries. There is Chinese saying that only the wearer knows whether his shoes fit. The practice of our corporate governance shows that modern SOE system with Chinese characteristics fits with the enterprise system for the development of China SOEs. Since the establishment of modern SOE system with Chinese characteristics, the vitality and creativity of SOEs are largely stimulated, that is, liberated and increased productivity as well as it promoted the enterprise's scientific decision making, risk mitigation, and market reform. The OECD principles of corporate governance, recognizing that the implementation of the principle depends on varying legal, economic, social, and regulatory settings. I think that there is no universal and immutable corporate governance mode for the whole world. UK, US, Germany, and Japan mode, which have significant impact around the globe, is also a product combining the general pattern of corporate governance and the home country's condition. Looking forward, we will continue to follow the direction of modern SOE system with Chinese characteristics, fully capture the advanced results of the road, improve by reform, develop by practice, so as to boost the vigorous vitality of modern enterprise system in China. The above is my sharing. I wish good health and all the best to all ladies and gentlemen. I wish the meeting is big success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tang Chun. It was very interesting to listen to you and understand what do you mean by, modern corporate system with Chinese characteristic and the role of the CPC in this system, which is, I think it's the core Chinese characteristic. So yes, and we were discussing yesterday evening, and I think it's very important for you for China to explain to other countries what is this specifics of the Chinese system, because we all know that China is embarked in a very ambitious and strategic endeavor with this Belt and Road Initiative, and a lot of other countries will have to every day deal with this Chinese characteristic of SOE. So we need to understand how it works. So thank you very much.